Hey everybody, my name is Asia and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing my January wrap-up. If y'all don't know, I hate wrap-ups with a
fiery, burning passion.
Loathe entirely.
But last year I really wanted to do them and I didn't end up doing them because I was absent for like half the year. But this year I'm making it a goal to do some sort of wrap-ups just because I feel like there's a lot of books that I read, especially last year, that I read and really liked that I never even talked about, and I still don't feel comfortable enough doing recommendation videos yet. I will probably start soon. I want y'all to still know the books that I'm liking and enjoying, which is why I did my tier ranking, all the books that I read in 2021 last year, so that way I could talk about every single book even if it was only for a short period of time. But that's why I'm doing wrap-ups this year, or at least I'm going to attempt, hence the January wrap-up. So first we're going to talk about my stats, so I'm just going to like scoot over so I can pop in the stats. So in January I read 11 books and only 2 of those are by POC authors, which is something I'm really working on. In February, obviously also because it's Black History Month, but I was trying to fit a lot of challenges, and Winterween I did as well this past month, so just it didn't work out where I read a lot of POC authors. I didn't reread any books. 7 of the 11 books I owned, which I'm really proud about because that's one big goal I have this year, is reading the books that I physically own. And I read 3,720 pages, and I read 1 contemporary, 2 fantasy, 1 horror, 1 literary fiction, 2 mysteries, 3 romance, and 1 thriller. So then for format, I'm doing a little bit of a different thing. So I obviously have audiobooks, ebooks, and physical, but then I'm also doing mix, which means that I'm doing a variety of formats. I normally would just choose the one I did mostly, but I'm just going to use mix for that. It's normally like an audiobook with a physical or an ebook. So I read 5 books mixed, 2 fully on audio, 3 fully as ebooks, and 1 fully physically. And then for audience I read 7 adult, 2 new adult, and 2 YA. And for ratings I read 1 2-star, 1 2.5, 1 3.5, 4 4-stars, 3 4.5 stars, and 1 5-star. And this month for me, rating wise, was like okay. I had a couple lower ratings. I had a lot of 4 and 4.5 stars, but the 1 5-star I had was a graphic novel, so I didn't even have any like novel 5 stars this month, which makes me a little sad. But then for type I read 7 novels, 2 novellas, and 2 graphic novels / manga. I realized in 2021 when I was going through my stats after my goals video that I didn't read any graphic novels in all of 2021, and I like graphic novels a lot, so I decided to make it more of a priority to read more this year. Even if it's not like a ton, I just want to read more graphic novels because I really like them. So I'm going to go in order of a rating, starting with the lowest rated. So the lowest rated book was actually the last book that I read for the month, and that is Where Dreams Descend. And this book I physically own, and it was for the Buzzwordathon, which was the 5 W's. I wanted to read Where They Wait by Scott Carson, and I really wish I did because I obviously did not like this book, and it was 15 hours long on audio because I left the physical book at home, and I just really don't understand what this book was, what the purpose was. It literally made no sense at all. Like, I really just did not enjoy this book. I'm debating lowering it down to 1.5 stars, but I did like the writing. The writing was good, but this book literally had no plot, no point. There was like a romance in here. I didn't care about it, and I just don't, there was like nothing, there was nothing happened in this book. Like, I can't even give you a synopsis or spoil the book because literally nothing happened.
You're just boring, that's all. That's all.
It was one of the most boring books I've ever read in my entire life. I actually could not, like, I really did not want to read this book. I'm surprised it didn't send me into a slump, to be honest, but I really just wanted nothing to do with this book. But I still finished it because I'm a trooper. I understand why people DNF books, but I'm not a book DNFer. I promote y'all DNFing books, but like, I just want to know. So I will just finish a book. I'm just not a DNFer. But this book is about these magicians who are at like this circus-like competition, and they're all competing to be a part of this man's circus, and they're doing like shows and stuff. And I realized I don't really think I like circus books. I will get to another one kind of a little bit later on. I don't really think I like circus settings. I don't know why. I feel like maybe I would like them in a horror or a thriller, but like for fantasy, I don't think I like them. Maybe I will try and read like Carval or The Night Circus this year, so that way I can try and like conclusively decide if I just didn't like this book or if I genuinely just don't like it, because this book honestly made me want to
pluck the eardrums out of my ears so I wouldn't have to listen to it anymore.
really did not enjoy it at all. As I said though, the writing is good. I just really did not care about the characters. The plot was non-existent and it was just so boring. I don't know how I made it through, to be honest.
I'm not going to entertain drama, chaos, confusion, and madness.
My next lowest rated book I gave 2.5 stars, and that is The Highwayman, and this was for the Swin Sisters book club for December, but I read it in January because we always have our live shows the next month to give people a good amount of time, and I like to read it closer to the live show. And this book, I just didn't really like it either. It was not as bad as Where Dreams Descend. That is for sure. But I think historical romance is not for me. Like, that is not my genre. I've read one other historical romance, and that's like everybody's like holy grail romance, the Duchess deal. And I gave it 4 stars, but I never felt inclined to pick up more historical romance or continue on in that series. And I just, it just wasn't giving what was supposed to be gave.
You really thought you ate? Give me that fucking plate.
I thought I was gonna like this one because it's supposed to be a darker historical romance, but it wasn't dark. Okay, so like this is about this woman who is like a widow, and she's kind of a widow, kind of not. Well, she had her first love when she was really young, like probably like 11, 12. I don't really remember because they were both orphans, and then they got married, and then he like went off somewhere and died. And then this man pops up a while later when she's like in her 20s, and he's like,
Hey, I knew that man that you're in love with.
And he like kidnaps her and is like really mean and awful to her and convinces her to get married to him for various reasons. The male love interest, Dorian, he just was so horrible, and I like awful male characters, like I really do. Obviously I like serial killer romances, I like dark romances, but normally I just like it, and I like it when they just own up to being awful, okay? But in this, they really tried to justify it, and I didn't like that, especially because the justification didn't really work for me. Like, he definitely had trauma, but we never even understood how the trauma affected him. We just saw that, okay, he has this trauma that we're barely going to talk about in passing, and then we're just going to take this trauma and his horrible actions, and boom, that's it. But we never saw how it actually affected him, his feelings, his emotions. We just barely had any conversation around the trauma. It didn't have to be in depth, but they barely even had. It just was like casually mentioned. And then his horrible actions towards her, and he treated her awfully. And there's a twist in here that everybody saw coming. We knew it was coming, and it was just, I didn't enjoy it at all. Again, I don't understand what the point of this was.
What was the reason, bitch?
And then this book is called The Highwayman, but Dorian was a highwayman in the past, and he's not even a highwayman now. So we barely heard anything about him being a highwayman. It just made no sense. This was the first book that I read in January, and so I barely remember it. I just remember not liking it. But if you want more of our thoughts on it, we did do our live show, obviously, for our book club, so I will link that up above. Dorian was just hot garbage, and I would personally stab him. So next, we're moving on to my 3.5 star of the month, and that is Escaping from Houdini by Kerri Maniscalco. And this was one of the books on my 22 book series in 2022, so I'm glad I'm really working on that list. And this book was my least favorite book in the Stalking Jack the Ripper series. I really, really loved the first 2 books, and this one, I just, as I said, I give it 3.5 stars. I enjoyed my time, but it wasn't my favorite by any means. So this series mostly follows Audrey Rose, and she lives in like the late 1800s, around when Jack the Ripper was killing, and she gets wrapped up in the Jack the Ripper killings, and she loves like to do autopsies and just all of that like mortician type stuff, and use that to help solve cases. But that's not really appropriate for a lady of her age in that time period. But her uncle does that for a living, and he teaches boys mostly about it, and he kind of like takes her under his wing and like helps teach her, and she ends up getting wrapped up in the Jack the Ripper murders and solving them. And in this one, we follow her again solving a different murder, because each one follows like a different serial killer basically, and they're not all real. Who the killers are like fictional characters created within the story. But this one, they are on a cruise ship, and there's like a carnival on board, and people start getting killed. And again, I think that's why one reason why I didn't really like this one is because I don't really like carnival aspects. And in the first book, she starts trying to solve the murders with this boy Thomas Cresswell, who is one of her uncle's proteges, and I love Thomas and I love Audrey. And in this one, we didn't really get much Audrey Thomas screen time, or book time I should say, and I just wish we had more of them, because I literally love Thomas Cresswell so much. I would actually, like, I would die for him. I just want to eat him up, okay? But this one, we just didn't really get much of them, and I don't know, I just don't really like carnivals or anything like that. So this one was still good. I still really liked the writing, I still liked the murders. It still had the essence of the first two books, but it just, the setting and the lack of relationship development between Thomas and Audrey just really put a damper on it for me. But I still liked this one, and I'm going to finish out the series hopefully in the next couple months. Moving on to my 4 stars. My first 4-star is The Good Daughter by Karin Slaughter, which I read for Winterween, and I really did enjoy this one. I did not enjoy it nearly as much as Pretty Girls, which is why I put 4 stars instead of 5, but I did still really like it. And maybe if I read it first, I would have liked it more. But in this book, we follow these 2 sisters, and when they were younger, they saw their mom get brutally murdered, and one of them was literally like buried alive basically. And the reason that their mom got brutally murdered was because of their dad was a defense criminal lawyer, and people would be upset that he would get people off. And so they, 20-something years later, they're both lawyers, but they are, one stays at home and lives with their dad, the other one hates their dad and kind of blames him for everything that happened. And one of them starts to get wrapped up in something that happened within the town. I will say that obviously these books have very, very triggering material all around. Pretty Girls is very triggering in itself, but this one I will say it did have a couple triggers besides just like violence and gore. This one also had school shootings as well as like infertility / miscarriage that were talked about pretty in depth. Pretty Girls is more like sexual assault, rape, and stuff like that, but this one focused more on school shootings, miscarriage, infertility. But I did still really like this one. I did like the law aspects. I thought it was gonna have more of the law aspects in it, and this one was just slower than Pretty Girls in my opinion. I still wanted to keep reading it. I still like Karin Slaughter just has really, really amazing writing where I just want to keep reading constantly. Like I need to just know what's gonna happen. So it did keep me reading for sure, and I finished it quite quickly, but it still was a bit slower to me. The beginning opens up with a big bang literally, and it's a whole bunch of gore, and that doesn't really carry out throughout the story. There's less gore and violence throughout it, which is like what I expected from a Karin Slaughter. It just really didn't have it. It had it mostly at the beginning and then a little bit at the end, but like mostly just at the beginning. And I still really liked it, and there was like twists in here that had me quaking in my crocs, okay?
I'm quaking in my
Crocs.
I was literally over there like, huh? And then I had to go downstairs and explain the whole plot to my parents, as usual with Miss Karin Slaughter. And I still, again, I really did like this book. I love how Karin Slaughter crafts sister relationships specifically, but just familial relationships in general. I just thought this one was really good, but again, not as good as Pretty Girls, which is like will always be the Karin Slaughter standard. But I still really, really enjoyed it, and I would definitely recommend it if you can handle the triggering material. The next one I also read for Winterween, but this one is not a thriller or a mystery. It is just for like the winter atmosphere is what I read it for Winterween, and that is Beartown by Fredrik Backman. I thought that I was going to love this book. It was one of my 5-star predictions from a while ago, and I did really like it, but I gave it 4 stars. In this book, we follow a hockey town, and I thought this was in Canada for some reason, maybe because of hockey, but it takes place in Europe. I think maybe in like
Sweden
or some Norwegian country, okay? I know that it's not Sweden. I don't remember what it is.
I suffer from short-term memory loss.
But some sort of like northern wintry country it takes place in, and that's where Fredrik Backman is from, and it's translated, which I didn't know this is a translated work. And so it follows this hockey town, and this hockey town is very close-knit. Everybody kind of knows each other, and then they obviously have a hockey team that is going to some sort of like bigger competition, and it's going to put them on the map. But one of them ended up sexually assaulting a girl, and that starts to come out right around the time of this big competition. And I really like the commentary on sexual assault that this book had. I enjoyed all the different perspectives that we got. This book has perspectives from almost like every single person in the town. Like you follow so many people, but the writing for me just didn't completely click. I don't know why. Maybe because it is translated. The only other translated work I think I've read is Confessions by Minato, and that one I really liked. Like, and the writing didn't seem to inhibit my enjoyment at all, but this one for some reason the writing didn't completely click with me. But I loved the whole hockey aspect of this book because I used to figure skate on the low. Like, I wasn't super good, I didn't do it professionally, I started really late, so like I was gonna be just bad, but I just liked it anyways. I love the feeling of being on the ice. Like, the ice is just such a different atmosphere, and it brings a different energy that I don't experience anywhere else. So them having hockey in this like kind of brought that back for me, and I felt the energy that they were talking about. And I've never been like a big sports person. Like, I don't really understand why sports are such a big deal for a lot of people. I did a lot of them when I was younger, but I don't really pay attention to sports at all. But this one kind of made me understand more like why sports are so important and to some people, and like why they mean so much. I understand more in like the Black community why sports can be such a big deal, because they help kids get into college, and that is like a big way that they can get into college, and sports are just something that African Americans tend to excel at. But I didn't really understand in general like why people like to watch sports. Like, why do you want to do that? And this one helped me understand it more. But I thought the sexual assault was going to start more towards the beginning of the book, because I think half this book or over half this book is like just set up, and it's before the sexual assault even happens. And so this book was very slow, which I feel like is something that occurs a lot in literary fiction, but I don't really read literary fiction that much. So it was just a little too slow for me, which is why I gave it 4 stars. But I still had a good time, and I thought, like, again, like there were certain aspects of this that I really liked, but I wish it was just like not more fast paced, but like I wish like events just started a little bit sooner instead of doing like all this setup. So my next 4-star is Just for Tonight by Rosie Adams. This is a really short New Year's novella that Rosie Adams put out, and I love Rosie Adams' writing so much. And Rosie is really known for her novellas. Again, her novellas are just really smutty, fast-paced, quick, but you can really feel the chemistry between the characters, which is why I love her writing so much. The chemistry literally jumps off the page, okay? Like, I feel it. It's just so good. I love her writing so much. And this one is kind of like friends to lovers, or kind of more like friends of friends to lovers. And as I said, it's for New Year's. It was perfect for the New Year's time. I really enjoyed it, and I would definitely recommend it, especially if you like Rosie Adams already, because it was just so fun and fast paced, and it was perfect for New Year's. I loved it so much. And my last 4-star that I have is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, which is going to be in a reading vlog going up soon-ish, hopefully. And this one I enjoyed. It was not my favorite, but this one has to do with 2 characters named Lily and Ryle. And Lily's dad was an abusive man to her mother. She grew up with domestic abuse in her household when she was a kid, and she actually had her first love when she was like 15, and his name was Atlas, and he kind of helped her through this domestic abuse, and he was homeless. And when her father dies, she is supposed to give like a speech at his funeral, and she stands up there and says nothing because she knows how awful that he truly was. And on that night, she goes to like a rooftop of some place and meets this man named Ryle, and that is our love interest. They kind of talk about everything, and then they never meet again for a while. And then like years later, she moves and decides to start up her own floral business. And I love her floral business because it's like flowers for people who don't like flowers, and so like the themes are a little bit different, and I like them. And she ends up having this girl walk in and ends up hiring her, and Ryle ends up being her brother. So they meet again and they start a relationship. And again, this does have domestic abuse in more aspects than just the way I talked about, but that's spoilers. But Colleen Hoover's writing and just her contemporary romances don't really work for me. This did also have a secondary writing style, so like her writing I feel like is just really boring, bland. It's giving salt, it's giving no flavor, okay?
Where's the flavor? Where's the flavor in this? I don't taste anything. I don't taste sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, milk, nothing at all. It's just bland.
It's very dry. It's like bread not toasted, no butter. It's just plain dry bread, and not even like sourdough. It's like white bread with no toast, no butter, no cream cheese, no jam. But then this happened in Ugly Love 2, where she had like a secondary type writing that normally was for like the past events, and in this one it's letters written to Ellen DeGeneres, and I don't really understand why it was Ellen DeGeneres specifically, but you know, whatever floats your boat, Miss Colleen. I don't want to talk about it too much because, again, it will be in a vlog coming out soon, but I did enjoy this one. The domestic abuse themes are something that really need to be talked about, but the romance in this didn't really work for me, and I wish it was more of just like a literary fiction, which you never really hear me say except for like this one and the float plan. I wish that it didn't end with a happily ever after, because I feel like it would have just been more of a powerful story, and I feel like the romance kind of was like the weakest part of this book, at least the romance that has the happily ever after at the end. So I really like this book. This does have pregnancy talk in it, so if you don't really like that, I wouldn't recommend this. I know some people who are my friends on BookTube don't really like pregnancy in books, and this does have to do with pregnancy in some sort of capacity in this book. So if you don't like that, or you find it triggering or domestic abuse triggering, I would recommend you just be cautious when going into this book. I also forgot to say The Good Daughter and this book were both also on my 22 books to read in 2022, so I marked off 3 of those books this month, so I'm really happy that I was able to do that. So I'm like ahead now, so hopefully I can keep this little trend going. So moving on to my 4.5 stars, the first one that I have is Lore Olympus Volume 1. I really enjoyed this graphic novel so much. It's really hyped on TikTok, and I really want to continue reading. I think about it a lot where I want to continue reading, but technically Volume 2 is not out, but it's on Webtoons, so I could read Volume 2 and mark it off as read, but I don't know what I should do with that. Like if I do continue, like I want to put it on my Goodreads, so should I just mark Volume 2 as read even though it's not out physically, because I can read up to that point? I don't know. Let me know down below. But in this one, it's like a Hades and Persephone retelling, and it's like modern Greek gods, and I really liked it. The art style in this wasn't my favorite. Like I really liked parts of it, but other parts I didn't like, but I really liked the colors that was used in this. Just some of like the women's faces specifically I didn't really like, but I just really thought this was cute, and it's like mutual pining like the whole time, and obviously there's going to be more romance in the next couple volumes, but this one just was a lot of mutual pining, and I loved it so much. I love mutual pining because I feel like that's what always happens in my actual life, but it was just so sweet, like especially because Hades, you know, Hades is the god of the underworld. Everybody thinks that he's so mean and awful and horrible, but on the inside he's just like such a sweet little cinnamon roll, and in this one he owns like hella dogs, and it's so cute. I love it so much. So that's really why I like this one. I don't really want to talk about it too much because it's a graphic novel, but I would highly recommend it, especially if you like Hades and Persephone retellings, or if you're looking for more of like a romance graphic novel. I would definitely recommend this one because it was so good. My next 4.5 star was Gone to See the Riverman, and this one was one that I read for Winterween because it is a novella, so it helped mark off a couple prompts. And this one was also recommended to me by Marcy from Marcy Reads for my 12 challenge, which is 12 books to read by 12 friends in 12 months. I'm just going to call it the 12 challenge from now on because that's too much to say. It's too much of a big mouthful.
And I know I like to yap my mouth, but not that dang much.
But this one I gave 4.5 stars. I really liked it. It's a little bit forgettable, but normally I don't like this type of horror. It's not normally for me, but I really liked it for some reason. I don't know why, but in this we kind of followed this woman who is obsessed with this killer in prison, and she goes to visit him and is really like obsessed with him. Like they basically have a romantic relationship even though he's in prison, and he tells her that she needs to go get this thing and give it to the Riverman, and so she brings along her disabled sister with her, and they go to try and see the Riverman, and they get this thing, and it's really gory and gross and unsettling, and it feels like you're literally transported to a different world at points, and it just felt so trippy. Like it started off so realistic. I was like, okay, well, you know, like killers, obsession, like that's normally what I like, but this one dives more into like different worlds and universes. I would say like if you really like Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke in The Patient, if you like those two, I think you'd really like this book. It's kind of like a combination of those two to me, and I feel like if you like it, you'd really like this. It just felt so trippy. Like it literally felt like at points like I was like on mushrooms or something. Like I've never taken mushrooms, but it literally felt like I was like taking a psychedelic, like hallucinating. Like it just felt so weird, but I really liked it, and there was just parts of this that were so gory. And this does have a content warning for incest, so if you think that's not something that you can handle, I would not recommend picking this up. Apparently a lot of the books that I read this month have triggers, but this one does have incest in it, and it's not like it's obviously this is a horror, so I know incest and romance books bother people a lot, but this one it's supposed to be a horrifying element. It's supposed to make the horror worse, but if that's something that you're not gonna like, again, I wouldn't really recommend this. But I really just thought it was like crazy, and there was just so many twists and turns just throughout this novella. It was so well done, and I really liked it, even though it's not even the type of horror that I normally enjoy. It was just really well done. There was one part of this which made me keep it down from 5 stars. I forget exactly what it was. I know I mentioned it in a Reading Sprints live show I was doing, but there was just something said in this that was like racist, and I just really didn't like that, especially because the author is not black, and it was said towards a black person by the white main character. I didn't like it, which is why I bumped it from 5 stars to 4 point. My last 4.5 star that I have is A History of Wild Places by Shay Earnshaw, and this one I would say is probably my favorite novel that I read this month. Gone to See the River Maid is my favorite novella, and my favorite graphic novel is coming up as my 5 star. So in this book we follow our main character Travis, and Travis has a history for being able to find missing people, and he's normally hired by families. He's like a PI basically, but he has a power where like when he touches things he can like see things about people, and it's really cool. And so he picks up this case of the disappearance of this children's book writer, and he believes that her disappearance may have been connected to this place called Pastoral. A lot of this book does take place at Pastoral, which is basically like a cult, and they are scared and terrified of this thing called the rot, which does not allow them to leave because it's like the trees are like the rot, and they believe rain has the rot in it, and like they just are stuck there because of the rot, because it will like kill people. So they just, and it's like a disease, so it'll spread to everybody if they like leave and come back. So people don't really leave Pastoral because of the rot, and most of this does take place at Pastoral. I think it's literally like the first chapter or maybe first 2 chapters that take place from Travis's perspective, and then the rest of it's literally at Pastoral, which I did not expect at all. That was one thing that like hindered my enjoyment a little bit, but this one was the Stacks of Strange book club pick for January, and I'll link our discussion up above or down below for y'all if you want to see more, because I did talk a lot in depth about cults in general because I'm in a religious cults class, and I just find it really interesting in general how people think of cults now, because I know a lot more about cults. Like people just think that cults become cults when there is power and a control over thoughts and actions and manipulation. That's like not what makes a cult. A cult is like there has to be a belief that's on the outside of normal society. So if it's like normal society or normal mainstream ideas, then it's a religion. But if it's a religion that's just people think is kind of weird or filled with like outcasts, normally smaller, that is a cult. There actually does not have to be any abuse of power, but there just normally happens to be, because even in religions, we could like say that same thing literally about religions of just in general, like Catholicism and anything like that, even like Mormons, you know, like Mormons are huge. There's so many Mormons, but we, like people who aren't Mormons, think that they're weird, you know? And so we can say that really about any religion, that there's like control of thoughts and actions and powers, especially for Mormons, for sure. If you want to know more about Mormons, I would recommend the channel Jordan and McKay. They are so good. They are ex-Mormons, and they talk about so much, so I would definitely recommend them if you want more on Mormons specifically, because they're so interesting. I just found it really interesting, the conversations that were had about cults in the chat for this live show, because it's like way different. Like what I know now because of this class, my religious cults class, it's just way different than like what normal people think of as cults, and I found that really fascinating. But I really loved the writing style in this. I thought it was really well done. I just wish more of it took place outside of Pastoral, but I really like the twists and turns because I didn't see them coming. I should have, but I didn't. But a lot of people who said they saw the twist coming, it didn't really hinder their enjoyment at all, and I just really liked it because of like the atmosphere. I would describe this as The Year of the Witching meets Follow Me to Ground, which are 2 books that I love. Follow Me to Ground was one of our book club picks for Stacks of Strange earlier on as well. I think maybe early 2021. I feel like it literally is The Year of the Witching meets Follow Me to Ground, because The Year of the Witching is like a religious community, and there is like this forest that has some sort of like stuff going on, and people stay away from the forest, and you know that's what it's like. But they're more based off Puritans, and that one's definitely more of a horror, and this one is not. And so the horror elements, I would just say, are like replaced with Follow Me to Ground's kind of like magical realism. I feel like they have a very similar magical realism style, which I did really like, but this one did have more like psychological abilities with their magical realism. And so overall, I just really liked it. I thought it was very interesting and thought-provoking, but I just wish a couple things were shifted a little bit. And apparently there was actually originally more about Travis in here, and then Shay Earnshaw's editor made her cut it. And if you like cults, if you liked Year of the Witching or Follow Me to Ground, I would recommend this. And I would just go in not expecting too much like true crime detective work, because that is not what this book is. It's definitely more like a little bit slower and just takes place in like this off-grid cult community mostly. So then my only 5-star for the month, which is a graphic novel, as I said, is Wash Day Diaries. And this was recommended to me by Vina from Miss WOC Reader. And this is actually not out yet. I think it comes out in June, but it was like a read now arc on NetGalley, which is how she recommended it to me. And I really, really liked this a lot. Obviously, I gave it 5 stars because we basically follow 4 black women, and they are all friends. We follow them throughout like their wash day and like how they all do their hair different and how they all are different. And I just love the diversity shown in this of black women, but it still had black culture within it so much in the hair. And there's just so many things talked about in this, because like each girl gets their own story, and then there's one final story with all of them together. And so this literally has like multiple men love interests coming after you. It deals with like depression one girl has, family relationships, and your family not really accepting you fully, especially because of your identities. It also has like an abusive / obsessive ex significant other. It just deals with a lot of different topics and so much representation of diversity within the black community. I just loved it so much, and the art style I really, really loved. I thought it was so well done. And if you get arcs from NetGalley, I would definitely recommend picking this one up. Sorry if the angle changed a little bit, my memory card got full. But as I was saying, if you just want a quick, diverse black graphic novel that talks about so many important topics but also shows the importance of friendship, I would highly recommend this one if you do get arcs and after this does come out. So I would highly recommend this one to anybody and everybody, because it's just so good. And it's a graphic novel. Like, it doesn't take that much time to read, but it's just so good. So those are all the books that I read in January. I had a pretty good reading month. I didn't really have any knockout favorites, which I am kind of sad by, except for Wash Day Diaries, because I love that one so much. But I didn't really have too many like knockout wow favorites. I did like a lot of these books, but they didn't blow me away. But let me know down below if you've read any of these books, if they're on your TBRs, what you read in January, if you think that there's any books that you read in January that I would like. Let me know down below. But that's all that I have for this video today, but I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye everybody.
Trying to look like you winning. I'm writing rhymes in the kitchen, soaking in moments we live in. Yeah, you got the nerve to be on me, faking your life for the IG. If you got my number, don't add me, cause baby